Welcome into this Wednesday edition of ESPN FC. We've got Shaka Hislop, Alejandro Moreno, Sebastian Salazar here in studio. We will be joined throughout the show by both Ian Darke and Sid Lowe. We look forward to their many contributions. It's actually in Sid's backyard, though, where we start. This, the cover of Us, of course, headquartered in Madrid. The visual is Gareth Bale golfing. The quote is, "Somos robots." We are robots.
Hey,
Somos robots.
Ah, there you go. You're better than that. You're better
obviously
than
referencing some lifestyle comments that Gareth Bale had to make about his lifestyle as a pro footballer. Sid, I want to start with you on this. This standoff doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It now seems to be getting nastier. What's the latest between Bale and Real Madrid?
Well, I think you've summed it up quite nicely. This is getting a little bit bitter. It's not really going anywhere yet. I mean, bear in mind that we're still in May, that the transfer window runs all the way to the end of August, although, admittedly, no one really wants it to run that long. They would much prefer this to be resolved before then. The problem is that right now, the positions are so far apart. Real Madrid want Gareth Bale to leave. Zinedine Zidane has made no attempt whatsoever to hide the fact that he wants Bale to leave and has started to try and send very clear messages to him. But of course, Bale's position at the moment at least is, well, I've got a 3-year contract. You're paying me 18 million euros a year after tax. If you want me to go, that needs to be resolved. There needs to be a solution where he doesn't lose money in his salary, where the offers in terms of where he goes are places that he wants to go to, are clubs that are big enough for him, that can pay him that kind of salary. And of course, from Real Madrid's point of view, they will want those clubs to pay some sort of transfer fee. Now, at some stage, something is probably going to have to give. And if it doesn't, then I guess what we're going to have is Gareth Bale reporting back for pre-season training going, hello, and trying to get on with it, but not playing.
Ian, let's get your perspective on this. Stevie Nicol said on the show yesterday that Gareth Bale shouldn't go back to the Premier League, just given his injury history. I wonder what you think. Do you think the Premier League is where he belongs?
Well, it would be quite a nice thought, and I think he'd be welcomed back, and he'd be a great signing, wouldn't he, for somebody like Manchester United who need this major surgery. But as Sid's been explaining, there's a lot of bridges to cross before that can happen, and maybe Gareth Bale is quite prepared to sit there in Madrid playing golf and not being in the team because Zinedine Zidane obviously doesn't want him in the team. So I think what is happening there will certainly prick up the ears of the big clubs in the Premier League. Whether they're prepared to bust their wage structure to have him on board and whether they can persuade him to come is quite another matter. But it's an enticing prospect.
Ian, what about his injury history specifically? Do you think Premier League teams, given their schedule, given the amount of games, should be buyer beware with this player?
Well, they would be a little bit wary, yeah, that maybe, and he's not getting any younger. He's pushing up towards 30 now, so it is a factor. But if you're, say, Manchester United, who don't have Champions League football to offer, I don't know whether that is a killer of the deal for somebody like Gareth Bale. But just say Manchester United were interested and offered the right kind of carrot, I think they'd be prepared to take their chances on that because he really would be a marquee signing.
Sid, I want to ask you a question here. Who has more leverage? Because obviously Real Madrid could just sit him on the bench for 3 years. But in the article that you wrote, I believe it was yesterday, you kind of make the point. Madrid can't make any moves until Bale is moved. So isn't he in the power position here?
Well, that's it. I mean, I think we're in a position where, in truth, right now, neither of them are really in the power position, in that both sides kind of depend on each other. So long as you make the assumption that Gareth Bale wants to play football and wants to either play football for Real Madrid, in other words, Zidane would have to back down and play him, or wants to go somewhere else and play football, in other words, Real Madrid would have to find that exit strategy for him, accept whichever transfer offer was made and make it all happen. And then, of course, it would also be in the hands of the buying club because they would need to offer Gareth sufficient money. But then, as you say, the other side of it is that Gareth has the power insofar as Real Madrid. Now, we always talk about Real Madrid having huge numbers of transfer targets, and this year in particular because Zidane does want a number of signings. But, of course, you can't just invent money. Now we tend to look at Real Madrid and Barcelona and say, well, somewhere along the line they'll find a way. And somewhere along the line, sometimes they do. But actually, if you look at Real Madrid's transfer activity over the last 3 or 4 years, what you're seeing there is an economic reality. And so in order for Real Madrid to go for Hazard, to go for Jovic, to go for Pogba, to go for Mendy, to go for all of these players that Zidane wants, they need to generate money. And of course, Bale is one of the ways that they can do so in terms of a transfer fee, but just as importantly, in terms of removing this enormous, almost 40 million euro salary from their annual budget. Now, it's very, very difficult. You say, who's got more leverage? Right now, I honestly don't know. And it does feel like this is a position in which we're going to wait and see who blinks first. And I do feel like this cannot go on like this. But at the moment, we are, without doubt, in a stalemate. And I don't know who's going to give way first when it comes to this.
Sid, at the beginning of the segment, we mentioned the word bitterness, nastiness to describe, this saga. Zidane has come out and said he was sorry for not allowing Gareth Bale to have the farewell after 6 years at the club, not giving him his farewell in that last game. Do you think Zidane has taken it too far in that regard?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say, I think, is that Zidane had said quite bluntly, well, I didn't put him on because I didn't, because that's just what happens. There are other players who went on. And when it was put to him explicitly in terms of, you have denied a historic player at Real Madrid the chance to say goodbye, or potentially, he said, well, when you think of it like that, no, you're right, I did that. I did that and I'm sorry. But it didn't feel like a proper apology, in truth. And I think a lot of people think it was a little sad that he didn't play. It was a little sad that he wasn't given the chance to depart. But of course, given the circumstances at the moment at Real Madrid, given the appalling season that they've had, given the fact that Gareth Bale, I think rather unfairly, has been made, if you like, the focal point of their failure, actually, if he'd put him on the pitch, maybe it would have been less of a goodbye and more of a good riddance from the fans. And so perhaps it was almost better this way.
I wonder what you guys here in studio think from kind of the player's perspective. Was it too harsh from Zidane? I mean, we know all that Bale did for Madrid. Should he have not been given a farewell?
I agree with Sid there. I think, given the reaction of the fans in the Bernabeu to Gareth Bale when you've seen him over recent months, it's not been great. And I'm not sure that's the note you would want to go out on. I'm not sure that'd be any different, kind of given where we are. Because as we sit right now, you're not absolutely saying that Gareth Bale will or will not be a Real Madrid player come August. The fans won't know that at that point. They've kind of made him the face of their feelings of this season in particular. And I don't think it would have gone well. I think Zidane did the best thing for Gareth Bale in not including him.
Zidane also mentioned in the press conference when he was asked about this that he can only go with the work that he sees on a day-to-day basis, essentially alluding to the fact that maybe Gareth Bale is not the player that he wants him to be on a day-to-day basis and questioning his commitment. Now, when you see then this front page that we just saw, which, by the way, nice golf swing. He's got a nice golf swing.
Coming from this desk, I don't know what that means.
Now, he wasn't in the fairway in that particular swing, but there's a nice golf swing. I think Xhaka could use that swing. I'm just merely suggesting. It just backs up what Zidane is alluding to, that he's essentially saying, look, he's not here committed to what we want to do on a daily basis. And I don't think this has happened just lately. I think this is a story that has been going on in Zidane's mind, focusing on Gareth Bale and saying, I don't think this guy is giving the best of himself every day here for the club. And so therefore, that's why I don't play him. It's the only reason why you don't play Gareth Bale and you don't have him to be part of your team, because you're essentially saying, you know what? He hasn't proven to be the player that we need him to be. And if that's the case, it's a referendum on Gareth Bale. And so who touches him when we talk about a position of power? Who touches him 3 years from now when he hasn't played regularly for Real Madrid and he has been out in the golf course?
To be clear, you don't think that's at all a possibility that a player would sit out 3 years?
Well, I wouldn't do it.
I would suggest, from a non-footballer standpoint, we would never ask anybody in any other business to give up money.
No, well, that's not what we asked, though. What we did say is that there's a way of restructuring your deal where you get the same amount of money over a longer period of time.
But that's giving up money.
Well, no, it isn't, because in 3 years' time, nobody's going to touch Gareth Bale. Would you touch Gareth Bale if he hasn't been playing?
I'm not a football manager, but no.
No, well, and here's the other thing that I think it's very clear. Once you make that decision that you're not going to play, regardless, that this is not about playing anymore, this is about collecting your money, what kind of message does that send to everybody else? What kind of message does that send to you as a player and as a professional? And And more to the point, I think at that point, Gareth Bale is making the decision, you know what? After these 3 years, I'm not playing anymore. If you commit down that path of I'm just going to play golf and I'm just going to collect my money for the next 3 years, you might as well retire.
All right, let's move on. Saturday, the Copa del Rey final, Barcelona against Valencia. Sid, we know that Ernesto Valverde has been given the dreaded vote of confidence. Whether they win or lose this Copa del Rey final, I mean, is this a right decision for Barcelona? Should they really stick with this guy after a couple years of not just Champions League disappointment, but Champions League disaster?
Yeah, I mean, that's the focal point, obviously, is not just, as you say, it's not just that they were knocked out in 2 Champions Leagues in a row, it's they were knocked out the way that they were knocked out with those 2 very heavy second-leg defeats away in Rome and then of course, away at Liverpool. And actually, last year, on the morning of the Copa del Rey final, when they eventually beat Sevilla 5-0, it was filtered out through the president's favourite newspaper that Valverde was basically on his last chance, and if he didn't play well in the cup final, that would be it. And Valverde himself was furious about this. Barcelona won a double, and that's the other side of this. You know, we focus this through the Champions League, which of course is the primary focus. But this is a team that's won a double and is on course perhaps to win another double that has been, I think, 17 points last season, 19 points this season ahead of Real Madrid. This is a team that's been absolutely fantastic in terms of its results domestically, although admittedly there's been one or two doubts about the style. But I think also you have to put into the package here, what do the players think? And the players are largely on his side, and Messi in particular is. What are your other alternatives if you don't stick with Valverde? Where do you go? Who do you turn to? Do you know if that manager will be able to do some of the tweaks? I wouldn't say a complete restructuring, but some of the tweaks that you need to do, particularly if Griezmann comes in. How do you reorganise that forward line? How do you shift the shape of the midfield? And so I think in a way, now this might sound silly about a manager who saw his team absolutely destroyed in Rome and destroyed in Liverpool, but in a way Valverde is seen as the safe option and the less risky option at this point. But yeah, you're right. Of course, this is a debate, and it's an internal debate, and it's a very important one. And you know, the response to say we're backing him, we want him in charge, was a response to the immediate aftermath of that Champions League disaster. And in a way, that was about saying, let's calm things down, let's think about this rationally. And I still think that internally that debate is still going on. And just because they said we're backing him doesn't necessarily mean that they will.
Plenty of questions for Ian and Sid here to start the show. Also, plenty of questions on Extra Time. A reminder, you can find it on our new YouTube channel. Check it out. ESPN FC tweeting the other day, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is ready to make Paul Pogba his Manchester United captain. Sources have told ESPN FC. Now, you should never read the comments on Twitter, but every once in a while you get a good one. Like this one from Ian Dark, who responds, a big call.
Yeah.
Ian, you have...
Twitter troll, you.
Ian, you've got slightly more than 140 characters now. Do you want to expand on that?
I was trying to keep it short and sweet, but yeah, and I'll stick by that. I think it is a big call because if you look back over the last season, Paul Pogba was hit and miss, to put it kindly. He had the Cold War going on with Jose Mourinho, who wasn't getting the best out of him at all. Then he had that mid-season surge. Somehow he got into the PFA Team of the Year. Heaven alone knows how that came to be, but it did. And then at the end of the season, you know, he was tactically not in the right position quite often. Tactical discipline would be a question mark. And generally, he seemed to be quite high maintenance around the place. So are they really going to try and make him now the leader of that dressing room going forward? Good luck with that.
What do you think? I mean, Ian seems to suggest there Pogba is not a captain type, whatever that means. Do you agree?
100%. What other evidence do we have that Paul Pogba should and can be the leader of Manchester United? When everything, and I mean everything, that we hear coming out of Manchester United is the fact that Paul Pogba has been inconsistent. He has a group of people around him that point him in different directions other than the focus of the team. That he can, at times, have himself be a priority over the team. Those things we have seen. And then they get displayed out on the field. To think that because you give somebody a captaincy, that changes who they are at the core of who they are personally and individually, it is a major mistake because those sort of decisions are the ones that get you fired.
Here's the trouble. As I think of Manchester United's players, you go through name by name of that dressing room, I don't know who's a leader. I don't know who you make the captain. There's not one person at Manchester United right now who I will, hand on heart, say will make a better captain than Paul Pogba. And that's not, I'm not trying to say that, you know, he's going to be a great captain or not. I just don't think they have that type of player. I think the appointment of Paul Pogba by Solskjaer is one that's made in an effort to keep him at Old Trafford. As much as we've been hearing and speculating about his future and that he wants away, so you make him captain and that's supposed to keep a player at the football club? I don't get that either. So none of this makes a whole lot of sense to me, regardless of how you slice it.
On what evidence do you then say to Paul Pogba, yes, carry this team forward? What evidence? What do we have to lean on and say, yes, you are the guy to take this responsibility over? I don't think so.
But the assumption is somebody has to be captain. And there is nobody that you could say, yep, he's the one.
Well, maybe that says a lot more about Manchester United than Paul Pogba himself.
I mean, obviously all the rumors, the rumors kind of point to him going to Real Madrid. But the question then for Sid is, where does he fit into this Real Madrid midfield? Because if you look at kind of the three that Zidane always used, is he better than any of those guys? Does he walk into a starting job with Real Madrid?
I think what we probably see with Zidane next year is a shift in the structure of the midfield. So you're right. You look at Casemiro, Kroos, Modric. He's not the same, although he occupies a similar part of the pitch or can occupy a similar part of the pitch to Modric, perhaps slightly less so to Kroos. He's certainly not a replacement for Casemiro. Nobody really wants him as a deep-lying midfielder. Although there is a tendency in Spain, I think, to see him as that, which is completely flawed, in my opinion. But I think we may see a shift in the structure of the midfield next year, which would open up an extra midfield place, and therefore perhaps he does fit in. Zidane likes the idea of someone who can provide goals for midfield, someone who can get beyond the forwards at times, someone who's got a little bit of everything, who's got the touch and the technique, but also perhaps a little bit more energy than that midfield currently has. And there's no doubt about it, Zidane wants him. At a club level, at a directorial level, they're less convinced, and also they know, of course, that it would be very, very difficult to get him. But right now, Zidane has a degree of authority that no manager since Mourinho has had at Real Madrid, and so Madrid are going to try to please Zidane. They're going to try to get him what they want, but there is a reality, there's an economic reality there, which makes this very, very difficult to happen. And as you say, then there is that footballing question, which is where exactly do you put him in? I guess part of the answer to that as well is also a very simple one. If you do have the chance to get a player potentially as good as this, you kind of worry about where you put him in the team a little bit later.
All right, thank you very much, Sid. Don't miss a minute of transfer talk all summer long on the website. Live updates as deals get done at ESPNFC.com. We revealed these yesterday on the show, but let's take a look again at Xhaka's top 5 Premier League teams all time. Treble-winning Manchester United, 98-99, number 1 on your list, Xhaka. This year's Manchester City, number 2. The 07-08 Manchester United Champions League winning side coming in at 3rd. The Invincibles 4th, and then 05-06 Chelsea in at number 5. That's Xhaka's take. Let's get a different perspective now. Ian Dark, do you have the audacity to disagree with any of Xhaka's choices, or even maybe the order that he put them in?
Well, not too sharply with Xhaka's choices, because that 99 team with Andy Cole and Dwight York up front and Teddy Sheringham and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Keane and Scholes, that was a heck of a team. And, of course, their treble included a Champions League, and Manchester United had another Champions League winning team in there as well. Manchester City haven't done that yet. So you can line it up any way you want, and you can line it up with the trophies and the records. But, you know, the evidence of your eyes is that this Manchester City team are really something special. 98 points this season. That's 198 points in the last 2 seasons. They've scored 169 goals in 61 games. Now, that makes them the highest scoring team in the whole history of English football. Never mind the Premier League, going all the way back to the beginning of time. So I'm very tempted to say Manchester City this year should be number 1.
All right, Ale, you want to be our tiebreaker here? Who are you with, Ian or Xhaka?
Well, I have to trust the man who has been across history a whole lot longer. Ian Dark, I am with you. He clearly has seen it all. There's no doubt that it's Manchester City in my mind. I think and I think Ian makes a point of what you see in front of you, and what you see in front of you. It's sometimes hard to believe how good they have been and how much they were pushed this year by Liverpool. They had to be perfect, and they were perfect when they needed to be. Manchester City has been outstanding, and the scary thing is that they're probably getting better.
On that note, there's an article in The Guardian from Jonathan Wilson, and it kind of captures a buzz right now around the Premier League. And there's a conversation, is Manchester City's dominance, their success, bad for football? Ian, I wonder if you have any thoughts on this debate and maybe just how serious it is over there.
I don't think it's particularly bad in England, because I think it's been a heck of a Premier League season. And remember, Manchester City were beaten 4 times before their blistering finish to the campaign. They lost to Newcastle United, they lost to Crystal Palace, they lost to Leicester City, they lost to Chelsea away. So that was 4 defeats, 3 more than Liverpool. So it's competitive, all right, and there's a depth about the Premier League. I think the problems may be a bit deeper, further afield, where Juventus are winning the title every year now in Italy. Bayern Munich keep on winning it. OK, Borussia Dortmund gave them a good race this time. So I think, there they are crying out for a tale of the unexpected. But I think it's something we've got to guard against. And we've got to guard against the big clubs in Europe. And you hear these ideas for changing the Champions League to load it even more in the favour of the big clubs so they can get in every year. All nonsense, really. I think we have to keep on trying to encourage a scenario where there could be something like a Leicester City story of 3 years ago when they won it at, 5,000 to 1.
Shaka, what's your response to those people who say City's dominance is proof that somehow football is broken?
I think it's idiotic, in all honesty. I really don't understand the point. Would we have had... I know the answer to this. We weren't having this discussion when Manchester United was as dominant as they were through the 90s and the early 2000s. What their success did was make everybody else a whole lot better. It made Chelsea, through a new owner themselves, figure out a way to compete. It made Arsenal figure out a way to compete and who they recruited in terms of manager and continue to bring through. Even more recently, what Manchester City's run last season did was force Liverpool to be a whole lot better. Now, if nobody else is able or willing to respond to Manchester City's dominance, then that's on those clubs. You cannot punish or criticize a team for being good. Liverpool answered the question. Now, because Arsenal are still trying to figure out their way after maybe staying a little bit too long with Arsene Wenger, and Spurs not spending, and Chelsea still trying to figure out their own puzzles, that's on them. That has nothing to do with Manchester City. They're making everybody else better. Figure out how to be better.
The big question around here is, will tomorrow's show be the show where we finally figure out who the best Premier League team of all time is?
Well, I've already answered that.
I thought you were going to ask us to be better for you, because I know where this came from, where you have been and where you are now. Take us through that ride from developmental player to designated player. Not everybody's been able to do that. It takes a special somebody. Tell us about that.
It was an amazing ride, and as you know, my years in Houston were some of the best. Even though I wasn't playing, get to learn from the likes of you, Brian Ching, Dwayne De Rosario, Brad Davis, some of the best. And the fact that you have Shaka on the show as well. I also remember my first Open Cup start when both Alejandro and I scored against Shaka against Dallas. And,
where's that video?
So I want to just twist the needle on that one. But those are the days that really set it up. But it was nice to come back to San Jose and just really find my feet and be home. It was my hometown team, and so nothing more special to be able to play in front of friends and family. And once confidence gets going, it's a funny thing.
I was starting to like it, Chris. I really was. I was trying my best. Thank you very much for that. I've got one question for you, Chris. And knowing that once you break the record, you'd be on this show, was it by accident or design that you timed it for when Craig Burley was not here?
Maybe just a little. There's only so much I can follow him on social media, so I couldn't do it face to face.
Yeah, no, I blocked him. I blocked Craig. It's all right. I understand.
Chris, he's not with us here in studio, but he is beaming in from England. We've got Ian Darke with us, and he wants to ask you a question. Ian, go ahead.
Hi, Chris. Fantastic achievement and many congratulations. I covered you a few times playing for the USA. Your longevity, I mean, because professional footballers always tell me as a commentator that the hardest thing to do is to keep putting the ball in the back of the net, and you've done that season after season after season. So I wonder what your advice would be to a young striker starting out.
First of all, thanks, Ian. I appreciate that all. And yeah, I mean, the thing that you have to work on, one, some of your weaknesses, whether it's your left foot or shooting or, placement, but also make sure that you hone in on some of your talents. I've been very fortunate to have some striking ability. And again, I like to joke with Alejandro, know your range. And, it takes a lot of practice, a lot of repetition. It's been countless hours, countless shots after practice. But I think that's also being able to know where the goal is, and it's something to perfect your craft.
Chris, Alejandro mentioned it. We talk about your time in Major League Soccer, starting on a developmental contract. I mean, we know that the finances there are kind of to the point where you have to make a decision. Do I keep pursuing this? Was there ever a time, and it's crazy to say this now that you're the all-time MLS leading scorer, where you maybe considered hanging it up or moving on?
There's definitely some trying times and times that you're just kind of have to do some soul searching. But to be honest, again, I was so lucky where I had a great locker room. I loved coming into practice every day. Besides the Houston weather, it was a beautiful place though. The locker room, the guys, they taught me how to be a professional both on and off the field, and taught me how to grind and win. And it's some things that you sometimes can take for granted when you're in there day to day. But looking back at it, so many valuable life lessons, and it was honestly it was a great time.
Chris, you know Alejandro as well as anybody. You've got to have some stories to give us. You have got to give us something. Come on.
Look at that laugh.
Come on. Well, I can tell.
Yeah, exactly.
You know a little bit too much.
There's a lot of them.
Oh, God, just give us one.
Exactly.
Just give me one.
The good story that I can say on air, but I love some good stories, especially the ones from UNC Greensboro, and him meeting his wife, him meeting his in-laws. There's definitely some good ones from there, but some ones that some ones, Alejandro, it was my rookie year from 2005, 2006. He decided he was going to eat a lot healthier, and he got fit. He was, dropped some weight, but it made for some of the worst bus rides because it made him gassy and some of the worst smelling ones. So we were giving him a hard time. I mean, he was looking all fit, but I mean, it was a struggle just to be with him in a room. But
we're so immature. We're party guests on this show.
We've talked off air about a couple of them other stories. We'll talk, don't worry.
You got any response, Ale?
Well, it's true. I can't deny it. I actually share a lot of things with Wando. He was actually in the room when I received a phone call in an afternoon prior to the game, and I was getting traded.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, It was there. So,
yes.
Yeah.
I actually remember that. Yeah.
Which, by the way, meant that Wanda was going to play more.
Good stories.
Yeah. He was celebrating. Somebody in that room was
celebrating. But yeah, exactly.
Hey, I have a serious question for Wando, a little bit. I'm not going to name names, but there's some guys who maybe from your generation, maybe MLS 2.0, 3.0 guys, maybe even going back to MLS 1.0, who swear that for all the talk about the league now, that the league was actually better then. What do you say to that?
I mean, again, I'm a bit jaded, but I would put that the Houston 2006, 2007 team against anyone we've seen, and I know the league's changed and it's ever evolving, and it's grown exponentially, which is a great thing. And I think teams are deeper, and the talent is just unreal when getting guys in their prime, and whether it's foreign guys or domestic guys, that are playing at a great pace, and but it taught me how to compete, and I think that. It's a crazy thing, but it would be interesting to see Zlatan go against Eddie Robinson. It was just, it's a different dynamic and a different battle, and it was definitely a different game. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure quite, there, but again, I would put those teams against any of the likes right now.
You live in right, Wanda, let me tell you, because people don't know this about you or may not know this, but you're a big sort of Bay Area sports fan, right? And as I remember this from our days, you were a Golden State fan when it wasn't cool to be a Golden State fan.
Exactly. Thank you. I do. Yes, I was a huge Warriors fan even when we were awful and Monte Ellis jacking up 50 3-pointers. It was still my team, and it's nice to have them winning, and they're fun to watch right now.
All right, well, Wando, thanks for the time. Enjoy the Warriors. Enjoy each of the memories of the 148 goals. Congratulations again, and thanks for joining us.
Number one. Remember number one. Remember where that came from, Wando.
Alejandro, a lot.
And that's Tigres. Am I off there?
No, you're not off at all. León is an historic team in Liga MX. I think they believe they put in together 14 straight wins before they lost to Chivas in the second to last game of the regular season. They're the best offensive team, the best defensive team, the most regular season points in Liga MX history. This is a very good team. Oh, and by the way, Angel Mena was the MVP of the tournament of the regular season. He's not even played that well in what is the playoffs against Tigres, who I know I don't have to talk to you or talk you into about how I feel about Tigres. It's a team of the decade when it comes to Liga MX. Under Tuca Ferretti, this will be their 12th final. That's 6-1, 5 loss. Say what you want about them, maybe losing the finals, but they get there, whether it be Liga MX, Copa MX, Libertadores, or Conca Champions. We're on the midst of a dynasty run from Tigres versus probably one of the better sides I've seen in Liga MX in León.
You mentioned Tigres' kind of recent history in finals being a little bit checkered. Very recently, most recently, they lost to their in-city rivals Rayados in the CONCACAF Champions League final. Not that Tuca Ferretti would be worried about his job, the manager for Tigres, but how much pressure is on this Tigres team to win, given the fact that they just lost a big final in their city?
There's an immense pressure within this city, within this team, within this organization. You know, Seb, we always talk about in the Liga MX circles about being an equipo grande, a big team. The top four, Chivas, Pumas, Cruz Azul, America, they're supposed to win these. Now, the fifth grande, in my eyes, is Tigres. Now, if you're knocking on that door, you can't afford to lose these type of games. When I was at Club Santos, we lost a CONCACAF Champions League final versus Monterrey. Bitterly. 30 days later, we had our revenge in what was a Liga MX final versus the same team. Well, Tigres has the exact same opportunity to kind of avenge that loss for their fans. Maybe not against their bitter rival, but against a very good León side. And kind of putting that nail in the coffin and saying, we are the team of the decade. We are the Quinto Grande, that fifth big team in Mexico. We're ready for this. And if I may, Tuca Ferretti's a guy who I think has a lot of pressure on him. Say what you want about Tuca and the 6 finals in Liga MX that he's won and all this, but Tuca Ferretti has his share of blame to go around when it comes to really getting it wrong tactically in Liga MX finals, in any final for that matter. So he's a guy who's got an immense sense of pressure coming into this game.
When you look at the bookmakers, they have a lot of trouble separating these two teams. In fact, it's almost an even split. Who's your favorite, Herc?
Wow. Right now, I would have to go with Tigres just because Angel Mena hasn't been the player he has been without the regular season, who was, the leading goal scorer. He was the leading assist man. He was the playmaker. He was León's everything. It's actually been JJ Macías who's kind of carried the load offensively. Well, he's actually gone. He won't be with León. He's going to be at this Under-20 World Cup. So I don't really know why they do that, why they allowed him to leave. It's a great and prestigious honor to play for your country, even though it's a youth tournament. But this is the grand finale. This is the biggest game of probably his career, and he's gone for that. Ivan Rodriguez in the center midfield with Luis Montes. He's been injured. He's trying to come back into the lineup. It's been Ruben Sambueza in his place. Well, Ruben Sambueza is going to be suspended for this game. That said, Tigres has their own injury doubts as well. Jesus Dueñas, who's probably been their best player this season, he's not going to play. Carlos Salcedo, who came in from Frankfurt, their center back signing, the Mexican national team player, who was the best player for the Mexican national team in the last World Cup. He won't be available. I think if you take together and you add all these losses, slightly it favors Tigres.
All right, Herc, thanks as always for the time. First leg Thursday at El Volcán, the home of Tigres, and then the second leg Sunday at León. Hey, how about the lineup we have for you this weekend? The Scottish Cup Final, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN+. Then we've got the German Cup final, Leipzig and Bayern Munich on ESPN News, right at around 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. An hour after that, Barcelona-Valencia, the final of Copa del Rey. That match available for you on ESPN Deportes. The action big on Saturday, even bigger on Sunday. Huge games across Serie A. They are all available to you on ESPN Plus. AC Milan, Inter Milan, Atalanta, and even Roma mathematically still with a chance, those 4 teams, to get the last 2 spots into the Champions League out of Italy. And then Monday, the richest game in football history. A spot in the Premier League on the line between Aston Villa and Derby County. Coverage starts Monday, 9:55 a.m. Eastern Time. That match available.
First of all, you
My mic fell
Who's
off.
going to drop their mic to start us off on the right
gotta
foot?
say it.
Catch it.
You gotta say it correctly. Because you're pronouncing the hi there, everybody.
Oh.
He brings it all together.
Yeah, I'm a uniter, not a divider. Hey there, everybody.
Hey!
Shaka, Ale, and Seb here in studio. We've got Ian and Sid with us as well, and plenty of questions to get to. The first one is addressed to Ian. Jeff wants to know, is Pep Guardiola the best manager in history? Not Premier League history, not European history. History.
Well, in the whole history of the world and the universe, you mean? Heaven alone knows, but he's a very, very good manager. But there have been a lot of good managers down the years, haven't there, Sir Alex Ferguson? But what about Bob Paisley and everything he did at Liverpool? He didn't even want the job in the first place, and he just couldn't stop winning with that team. But that was another era. In the modern era, yeah, Pep and the way his teams played, the delightful football, the sublime football at times, yeah, he's the best of the current crop anyway. That's the best I can do for you.
You know what's funny is that right after they lost against, or they didn't advance past Spurs in Champions League, we sat here in this very same studio, and the questions coming in, is Pep Guardiola a fraud? Now people asking, is he the best manager in history? People got to make up their minds.
2 weeks later,
Yeah.
he's gone from a fraud to the
Yeah.
best ever in the history of the universe.
Ever.
Are you saying fans can kind of change their tune from week to week?
Well, apparently.
Why you go to Ian with that question?
Literally because the producer told me to.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were trying to hint that Ian's been around for most of history.
Well, that
History.
sounds like something that you're projecting
No,
now.
I'm just saying. That's,
Yes.
you know,
He has a more ample view of history.
well,
Yes.
Experienced. Sid also has some experience. Sid, what do you think? Pep Guardiola, the best manager in history?
In history, I mean, you know, not just beyond the names that have already been cited. I suppose you can add Shankly to that. You can add Cruyff to it. Of course, the guy that inspired Guardiola. You can go right back through history and so many names. And right now, I mean, he's possibly the most exciting. It's very difficult to see who else you can kind of put in there. I mean, you can talk about what Pochettino's done at Spurs. Of course you can. You can talk about what Klopp's doing. But I guess right now he might be, but then I thought he was a bald fraud. I thought that was the whole point. In fairness, by the way, those two questions that are 2 weeks apart might have come from 2 different people. So the first one might have come from someone who thinks he's a fraud, and the second one come from someone who thinks he's the best manager of all time. They might not be the same person. Maybe what we can do is release those 2 into a room together and let them fight it out.
Yes, promote violence on the show, Sid. Well done.
Absolutely, 100%.
It just dawned on me, and I might be a little bit late with this.
Okay. Well, as
Is
you
Sid
are
and Don
many times.
Johnson the same person?
Huh?
Sid and Don Johnson. Is Sid going for the old Miami Vice
Yeah,
look?
well, yeah.
I
He's
am
got a little something going
absolutely
on.
I'm looking at Sid. I'm like, I know that look from
Well,
my.
he needs a lighter colored jacket, though.
Well, yeah.
That is true.
But
The jacket's much too
gone
dark
for the old
for
Don
that.
Johnson
Come on.
stubble and everything, and I expected better.
No,
from Sid.
hang on,
And-
Shaq. I think you got this the wrong way round. I am not copying Don Johnson. Don Johnson has been copying me for years.
well.
Sid
Okay.
Lowe, trendsetter.
Okay, Sid.
I also have to say, Don Johnson's hair was flowing. I'm not sure that's it.
Now we're doing that.
Hey, careful now.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
gone for there's a strong
Cheeky.
breeze blowing. Look,
Hey, watch out.
very strong breeze.
All right, next question is coming for Ian. Who was the best player outside of the top 6 this season in the Premier League? And Ian, know that if you don't say Raúl Jiménez, you will be docked 100 points.
Well, you would say that, wouldn't you? Yeah, well, he'd be in contention, wouldn't he? Yeah, well, look, Wolves finished 7th. That's the best team outside the top 6 this season. But I'm not going to say Jimenez. I'm going to say João Moutinho in the midfield, because every time I saw Wolves, he was controlling the game.
Fair enough. Next question for Alejandro.
Hold on, you're disappointed.
Yeah, he's happy. He's moved on. He's like, oh, wow.
But then it must be asked, what is the love affair with Raúl Jiménez? What is the connection?
Well, he's probably the future number 9 of the Mexican national team.
And okay.
And that's my squad. So
I thought you were American.
I'm both.
Oh.
We've been over this before.
Well, you kind of pick and choose.
Yeah, so you don't get the answer.
You pick and choose.
You don't get the answer. So you're all angry. Yeah. Let's just move on.
So next year,
no more of that.
You know who's his favorite player is going to be next year in the Premier League?
Oh,
Christian Pulisic.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
Because see, that's just. If he does well. If he doesn't do well, we're back to Raúl Jiménez.
That's right.
That's your answer's ready.
It helps to have options in this world.
Yeah.
Okay. You know.
All
right, so, Ale, this one's for you from Matthew. Do you think Alexis Sanchez could get back to form if he changed clubs now?
Well, he has to change clubs regardless, but he's not going back to form. What is form now for Alexis Sanchez? And he was, when everybody else was playing well under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, when that change happened, Mourinho was gone. He was the one consistent part. He did not play well. With Mourinho, with Solskjaer, or anybody else, I think at this point Alexis Sanchez is not going to be the player that people have become accustomed to. It's gone. Game is gone for him. Not at the highest level anyways.
Ian, Kerry wants to know, what do you make of FIFA announcing that they will continue to use the 32-team format for the 2022 World Cup? Some suggestion they'd go to 48. They've decided against that today.
Great idea. Thank goodness for that. There is some common sense at last. The 48-team idea was absolutely horrific. The last World Cup in Russia was great with 32 teams, so well done, FIFA. We don't say that very often on this program, do we?
What do you think, Shaka?
I don't think that 48-team World Cup was ever going to happen in when's the next one? 2022.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
Why? Just
Shaka's in the know.
No,
Shaka's in the know.
No,
Shaka's
I know.
a FIFA guy.
You have 3 years to plan in a country that's already too small to host 32 teams. It was just totally impractical. To host 48 teams, they were talking about expanding to other Middle Eastern countries. You don't do that 3 years before the tournament. I mean, it's ridiculous to even think that it was ever going to happen.
Timbers wants to know, what kind of impact will Pulisic... Oh, speaking of
hey.
Pulisic,
Well, you could answer this
Go
question.
ahead. You
I don't even know what the question is, but I want you to answer
You
it.
take it.
All yours. What's the question?
You want me to ask it for you? You want me to ask it for you?
Yeah, you ask it, Ali. You ask.
Where is it?
This question is for Sebastian.
What kind of impact will Pulisic have at Chelsea this year?
The only responses that ever come to me are, you're hosting the show again today?
Yes!
Those are the responses. The only questions directed to me. This question is for Ian. Ian, what do you think about...
No, it's for you. No, never mind that, Ian. Never mind him, Ian. This question is for you.
I think he'll have an excellent impact and be quite pivotal for Chelsea.
Better than Raúl Jiménez?
No.
There he is.
Jimenez is a bigger part of Wolves' attack.
And there it is.
Statistically, I would rely more.
Oh, he's still going.
Okay.
He's still going over there. Look.
Well, this one's definitely for Ale. Carabo wants to know, is there any human being who can say, what, exclamation point, better than Ale?
What?
The answer is
No.
Where did that come from?
This show? Something that Craig said? Oh, no. Something that Gab said. It wouldn't have been Craig. It would have been
Gab was the
Gab.
Gabometer.
Yeah.
And the final question. Hey, have you guys wished Paul Mariner a happy birthday yet? He'll be here tomorrow, but it's his birthday today.
Oh. Huh? I wish him happy birthday tomorrow.
Oh.
I
wonder if Irvin, the Schalke mascot, if he's blowing the candles today as well.
You're not on Instagram, are you, Ale?
No, I am not.
Dan Thomas had a brilliant Instagram post. He had the Schalke mascot, happy birthday, Paul.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So is there going to be cake tomorrow? I'm not in tomorrow.
Might have to adjust that schedule.
If there's cake tomorrow, I might come
Cake,
You're not
Paul's
coming.
here.
Paul's here. And cake.
Mm.
I'm here.
I like cake.
So we haven't wished Paul a happy birthday, but we can do it now. Happy birthday,
I'll come in
Paul.
for your birthday.
We miss you. I think it's number 6.